Last time we met, I cautioned you to take baby steps as you start setting boundaries and tell the truth. Well, there comes a time when you need to practice grown-up no's. You need to deal with your number one boundary buster and the people in your life with whom it's difficult to set limits. Straightening out these relationships is a major goal in becoming a boundaried person. Setting important limits with such significant people and setting important limits in significant situations involving key issues in life is the fruit of much work and maturing. And our real target is maturity, the ability to love successfully and work successfully, the goal of becoming more like Christ. Boundary setting is a large part of maturing. We can't really love until we have boundaries. Otherwise, we love out of compliance or guilt. And we can't really be productive at work without boundaries. Otherwise, we're too busy following others' agendas. The goal is to have a character structure that has boundaries and that can set limits on self and others at the appropriate times.
Last time we met, I called you to rejoice when you felt guilty as you took your first steps into a boundaried existence. Now I want to encourage you by telling you that with consistent work and good support, the guilt eventually diminishes. The point comes when we've shifted from listening to our overactive conscience or internal parent and respond instead according to the biblical values of love, responsibility, and forgiveness. These values will have been reinforced by many, many experiences with loving, truthful people who understand boundaries.
Being able to love the boundaries of others is another measurable sign of growth. If we expect others to respect our boundaries, we need to respect theirs for several reasons. First, loving others' boundaries confronts our, and these are crummy words, selfishness and omnipotence. When we are concerned about protecting the treasures of others, we work against the self-centeredness that's part of our fallen nature. Second, loving others' boundaries increases our capacity to care about others. It isn't difficult to love the agreeable parts of people. It's another story, however, when we encounter resistance, confrontation, or separateness. Loving others stretches these muscles.
What did you do the last time you were asked for something you weren't sure you had to give? Even though you were unsure, you either said yes or no. In most cases, the second response, no, is the more mature response. Why? Because it is more responsible to give out of our resources than to promise that which we might not be able to deliver. You see, boundary-injured individuals make promises, and then they do one of two things. One, they resentfully make good, or two, they fail on the promise. Boundary-developed people, however, make good freely and gladly, or they don't promise at all. So learn not to promise too much before you've done our spiritual and emotional calculations. When you're not sure about something, say no. Freeing your no like that also frees your yes, and that's the 10th sign of boundary growth. When you can say no without conflict, you can freely and without resentment and without being motivated by guilt say yes to love and to service.
The last sign of boundary growth we'll look at is the value-driven goal setting that characterizes people with mature boundaries. The ultimate goal of learning boundaries is to free us up to protect, nurture, and develop the lives God has given us stewardship over. Setting boundaries is mature, proactive, initiative-taking. Individuals with mature boundaries have a direction in their lives, a steady moving towards their personal goals. They make choices not on the fear of other people's reactions, but based instead on what they've worked out under God to be important for their life. Their goals are not based on emotion, but values. They plan ahead, and they experience the joy of desires fulfilled. But doesn't life interrupt? Won't there be trials and complications and people wanting me on their track and not God's? Absolutely. The days are truly evil. But the mature person with limits understands and allows for resistance to boundaries and goals. And he or she knows that, should it be needed, a no is waiting inside the heart to be used, not for an attack or to punish, but to protect and develop the time, talents, and treasures that God has allocated to us during our 70 years on this planet.
We trust that you've been encouraged by what you've learned about boundaries and about yourself in our meetings together. But perhaps the most encouraging note we can end on is a picture of Sherry with boundaries.
Remember her from session 1? Sherry stumbled through the day in a haphazard, out-of-control fashion. But now, like you, Sherry has worked through the Boundaries video series. She has decided to restructure her life within the clear boundaries we've outlined here. Let's take a peek in on her life with boundaries.
Lord, you've brought me a long way. It helps that Dave and I are setting limits for the kids and getting them to bed. I think I handled last night with Mom better. It wasn't easy to say, Mom, I want to visit with you, but this is a really bad time. Amy's been really looking forward to her first sewing lesson, and I didn't want to postpone it. You could come in and watch if you'd like, or I could call you tomorrow and plan a time for us to get together. I could tell by her reaction that it wasn't easy for her to hear. My support group really helps me not feel guilty for saying no. It's fun to have a new dress, a size smaller. Thanks God for my new self-boundaries. You're really helping me stick with this diet and exercise program. Unusual to hear from Michelle. She doesn't call much since I've started talking to her about the imbalances in the relationship. Like that time at lunch when I told her that she seems to call only when she was hurting, but that she is either unavailable, distracted, or uninterested when I'm struggling. Maybe she'll call back, maybe not. I'm sad if she's not happy with me, but people probably weren't too happy with Jesus when he withdrew from them to be with his Father. Trying to take responsibility for Michelle's feelings was trying to own something God never gave me. And these days, I know I can count on the kids to help us all get out the door. Bed's made, homework done, lunch is packed, and a few minutes to spare. And dinner time is so much more enjoyable because it's not such a hectic pace leading up to it.
You didn't call me.
We can enjoy each other's company, talk. Lord God, thank you for the second chance. And thank you for the hope you gave me and for taking me along your path.
As you've seen, Sherry's day is now characterized by the freedom, self-control, and intimacy that result from a lifestyle based on a godly understanding of boundaries.
Sherry's example is not a fairy tale fantasy. It is a real life change that you can have and maybe are experiencing. Like Sherry, you can learn to take ownership of your life. You can learn what things are your responsibility and what aren't. You can stop taking on problems that God never intended you to take on. You can learn to live by biblical boundaries and experience the relationships and achieve the purposes that God intends for you.
It's our prayer that your biblical boundaries will lead you, as Sherry's have led her, to a life of love, freedom, responsibility, and service.